the nurses had oxygen on me, had me turned onto my left side, and they were wheeling me out of the room to the labor and delivery room across the hall, or pardon me, to the operating room across the hall, and calling code blue. And I passed out. I say passed out. I went out, or I died in the hallway. My last memory was of just trying to suck air into my lungs, and it was like trying to breathe through a teeny tiny straw. I just couldn't get any more air. And the next point of my awareness was being far above my body, although I didn't recognize me on the table. I didn't know that that was me. I didn't know that was a body. I didn't know people were around me. I had no reference for anything that I could see. And I could see. That was the only sort of sense that I had, other than my understanding that I was Krista. I was still my sort of consciousness. And although I had no memories of being human, I didn't know what human was. All that existed for me was my vision and feeling. And I felt interested. I felt sort of neutrally like, oh, that's very interesting. I wonder what's going on. But I wasn't thinking. It was all feeling. So I watched the body. I saw the body, and I saw as black particles came shooting up from it. It was really like around my chest and sort of head area. And they came shooting up to where my vision was and sort of surrounded me in this undulating kind of static cloud. And I thought again, how interesting this is. And I looked back down and I saw my doctor, and I now know he was delivering Maggie. And there was like something in a blue towel. And I saw a man walk in the door and stand there for a moment in blue scrubs. And he just sort of stood there for a second. Then he walked up to the edge of the bed. And I later found out that my doctor's partner showed up to help him during the delivery of Maggie and little bit of the aftermath. So again, I'm up there and I'm looking and I see this happen, and I see them hand Maggie to somebody at my right shoulder, and she turned around very fast. And I thought, wait, I want to know what that is. And I drifted around the other side of the room towards my left side, and there was somebody at my left shoulder putting something into my chest. And I was having that feeling of really wanting to know more, feeling more connected, like more attached to the situation, whereas before I was very detached. And as soon as that feeling started to grow within me, I felt a tug to my left. And it was as if somebody's pulling on your shirt. I was like, no, I want to stay. And it pulled harder. And I realized, just intuitively knew that I needed to go. And I felt, okay. And as soon as I felt that, I was pulled from the room. I went through the wall, through this white, bright flash of space, and into the same particles I was, very dense this time. And I was moving along, although it was imperceptible. And I could see next to me, there was the dense particles, and then it would become sort of fluid-like, and it was sort of gray and a little bit of white, and then it would go back to the dense particles. And all of a sudden I stopped, and I had an instantaneous download of information. It was like a funnel. And then it all came to one point, and that point was love. And love was sort of everything. Love was the answer to all the questions that I ever had in my existence here. It was the answer to everything. And I felt the love. I felt this incredible bliss, beyond words in description. It was absolutely the best feeling ever. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then off to my right, there was a little white sort of speck in the darkness, and I wanted to go to it. I had a desire to go, and it wanted me to come to it. So I started moving in that direction, and as I moved closer, it got wider and wider and wider, and pretty soon it was sort of a wide opening, like a circle, with a cloudy sort of essence to it, foggy, I guess I could say, and there were shadow beings there, and in the front was a little boy, and I would describe him as like a little Tom Sawyer kind of boy. He was like, I just knew. He was about 7, and he was wearing this wide brim, round brim hat and overalls, and he needed my help. And there were adult shadow beings behind him, and they were just sort of there. And I wanted to help him, so I moved into that space, and the shadow beings sort of fanned out in a bit of a line on one side of the space, and I was sort of in the middle, and I looked around and I didn't see the boy, and I wondered, oh, where did he go? And I felt the desire of all of these shadow beings for my help. They all wanted my help, and I wanted to help them all. So as soon as they felt that, they started to come at me sort of one by one and dart away. And I didn't know what they were doing at first. And I realized that as they were doing it, my vision started to sort of fade. And I felt, I don't want to be here anymore. And I was pulled out of there. So when I was pulled out, I was back into the really dense particulate matter, and then fairly quickly merged through another opening that was less distinct. It was in the dark particulate matter, and I merged through there, and it was this glorious, beautiful landscape of bright yellow flowers out ahead of me, and this evergreen forest to my right, and to my left a rocky moss covered beautiful waterfall. And then in the distance there were undulating hills, green hills and trees and a blue sky. And it was just beautiful. And I merged with it. It was me and I was it, and we were one. And it was just the most amazing feeling. And I was flanked on both sides by these tall beings. And they were probably, I would say, like 9 feet tall. And they were there, and they were there to support me. And they communicate, everything was through feeling. So they communicated to me, you can stay here, you can go beyond this to what comes next, or you can go back. And I could have stayed there forever and ever and eternally. I didn't know what came next, and I didn't know what I left behind, but I chose to come back.